An introduction to the base pay and entitlements of an active duty personnel is where we will start. As often as possible, the information in this module will be generic to all service members. Each branch will have different policies or entitlements. It is best to refer the service members to their respective administrative representative or branch website for specific details. The leave and earning statement, or more commonly referred to as the LES, is the main communication method for all things income. One LES is distributed a month, but members receive pay on the 1st and the 15th of the month. From basic pay and entitlements to the amount of leave that is accrued and TSP contributions, it has it all. It is essential that the service member become intimately familiar with this statement and check it regularly. They can access their LES through the platform MyPay. While seemingly tedious, it is recommended that the service member review the LES every month for errors, omissions, and overpayments. It is the service member's responsibility to bring incorrect information to the attention of pay specialists. Errors that seem in favor of the service member, like overpayments, will eventually be corrected and subtracted from the following month's pay, and one or two lump sum payments that may be unaffordable for the member. Errors against the service member, like not receiving entitlements or incorrect status or location data, may be found and awarded in a lump sum, or never found and lost as income. Knowing what is supposed to be received, when it is supposed to start and stop, and how much it is supposed to be is crucial for financial planning. Learning to read the LES can be a little daunting. The LES for each service will be similar, however the Marine Corps does change theirs up a bit. It will have the same information, but the way it's displayed or exactly where it's found may be a little different. The very top row is the identification row. In addition to personally identifiable information, it lists the pay grade and years of service used to calculate base pay, which we'll discuss on the next slide. It also has the ETS, or expiration term of service, which is when they are slated to discharge from military service. If there were changes made to the LES after the date listed in the pay date box, they will not be reflected on the print or digital copy. The service member will need to check the next version for the changes anticipated. The entitlements box is exactly that, all entitlements and allowances earned during that period. Entitlements are allowances that are provided for specific needs, such as housing, food, or special pay. Deductions list all debits. This includes those current to this pay period and any retroactive deductions. These will include taxes, SGLI, AFRH, meal deductions, TSP contributions, and government overpayments. There will also be a line listed mid-month pay. This shows you how much will be received on the 15th of the month. The EOM, or end of month pay, in the summary box is how much they will receive at the end of the month. And the total listed in entitlements will show you how much they received for the entire month. Allotments will most commonly list discretionary and non-discretionary allotments. Non-discretionary allotments include charitable contributions to military relief societies, charitable contributions to eligible organizations, court-ordered involuntary child or spousal support, government indebtedness, commercial debt, garnishments, and delinquent government travel credit card balances. Discretionary allotments include medical insurance premiums, contributions to dependents or banks, credit unions or investment companies, military housing payments, and DoD savings deposit program. Service members are allowed up to 6 discretionary allotments. Half of the total allotment will be deducted from each paycheck. Summary will do just that, summarize all the previous 3 boxes. Also in this box, the DIEMS refers to when the service member signed up for their military service, and RET plan denotes which plan they are under for retirement. It will either be High 3 or BRS. See the retirement module for more information on these. We are skipping to the leave and FICA taxes row. The leave section will only be financially applicable to those who are separating from the military. You'll find more information on that in the transitioning module. The federal taxes and state taxes always deserve a review. The state box indicates residency. Unless they want to retain voting rights in their home state or for other reasons, changing residency to an income tax-free state when assigned to active duty there is a consideration. They can then keep their residency through the remainder of the active service. The green boxes indicate the filing status. Even if the LES reflects with dependent status, it is the service member's responsibility to update their filing status in MyPay. It's not uncommon to find a service member who is married to an unemployed spouse claiming single and one. Simply changing their filing status will often provide more income monthly for them. Pay data denotes information on housing and dependent status. The BAQ type, VHA zip, and dependents box will be the ones to review. This is where you'll find the number of dependents. This is important to ensure correct entitlements are received. It also lists the zip code, which is important for determining BAH rates. Ensuring the zip code is where the service member currently resides will reduce over and underpayment errors. The Thrift Savings Plan TSB box will have all the contributions detailed here. This 8.5 by 11 pay stub will have an open bottom quarter with special instructions, notices about changes in allotments, deductions, or entitlements, and other information. It will also list the Career C service counter. It's helpful to read these statements to avoid surprises. Again, reviewing the LES monthly will help the service member better understand their pay and be able to recognize errors for early corrections. The basic pay structure is standard across military services. One can determine a service member's base pay if they know their pay grade and number of years in service. An increase in the pay is received each time a service member advances in rank and every 2 years. Additional income is determined by their rate, specific job and credentials, deployment status, dependent status, and bonuses, to name a few. Just as they can have advance in pay, they can also be reduced. This reduction is generally the result of a non-judicial punishment, where the service member went against military rules or committed a civilian crime. Their commanding officer has the authority to reduce either their rank or pay or both. A reduction in rank is generally permanent, and advancement must be earned again. In 2023, a Basic Needs Allowance, or BNA, was introduced to supplement the income of service members with dependents based on their household size, annual gross income from the preceding calendar year, location, and applicable federal poverty guideline. The allowance is meant to raise the household to 150% of the federal poverty guideline. Members are screened for this need and notified that they may possibly qualify. This is an optional allowance and still requires an application process, even with the notification of potential qualification. There are more than 60 types of special pay a service member can receive. They could be related to specific skills, education, qualification, the length of service in a specific capacity, or conditions under which they are performing their service. It could also be branch-specific or Department of Defense initiated, such as a retention or enlistment bonus. Special pays can be time-bound, such as combat or hostile fire pay, while others are ongoing as long as the individual is meeting the eligible criteria, such as aviation career incentive pay. Not all designations will have access to special pay. In general, special pay is received when the designation is more arduous, undesirable, dangerous, causes greater hardship, or requires an extended education. This is an example of what could be offered. You'll find an exhaustive list with current options and the resources, but you are not expected to know what is available. Understanding if a special pay and/or incentive are due can impact conversations around continuing military service or selecting out, as well as financial goals. As with civilian bonuses, it is good to discuss and have a plan for the money. Will it be a part of the income that helps the service member meet basic needs and lifestyle, or will it be used to supplement financial goals? Basic Allowance for Housing, or BAH, provides service members equitable housing compensation based on housing costs in local civilian markets when government quarters are not provided. Base housing is meant to be the default choice in housing selection due to complications brought about by frequent moves. Most service members are given the choice of living in provided housing or choosing civilian housing. BAH is listed in the entitlements section of the LES and is tax-exempt income. BAH reflects the costs associated with rentals and increases in the market fluctuations annually between 2 and 5%. There is a 1-year guarantee of BAH rates to help protect against service members in the event that BAH decreases. Most commonly, it increases, but it has been known to decrease. In recent years, BAH increases have struggled to keep up with the cost of rentals. BAH is calculated to cover approximately 95% of housing costs. It's not designed to cover all the housing costs as it affords the freedom of choice. However, higher or lower out-of-pocket costs will depend on the amount of BAH and housing choice. When considering options, the BAH calculator is a very good tool. There are complex situations that can apply to the receipt of BAH, including having a child who lives with a former spouse or living in government housing while paying child support. Even service members without dependents living in government quarters are entitled to partial BAH. Contracting the BAH representative at the local finance office or command is the best way to understand these complex compensations. A military-to-military service couple are each entitled to receive a single BAH in accordance with policy. If the couple also shares a child, one partner will receive a single BAH while the other receives BAH with dependents. The service member with a higher rank is generally assigned the BAH with dependents. The extra money can be used to offset the financial complexities that arise with having two active duty parents. Those living in off-base housing or family housing may be able to have dogs or cats. The restrictions and limitations will be dependent on the location and the type of housing chosen. It's important to have a backup plan in the event that the furry family member is not allowed in housing. This includes additional financial considerations for alternative housing, fostering the animal with a friend or family member during the duration of a duty station, or rehoming the animal, which is often the last or rarely considered action by most. Some expenses that may be different for a military pet are listed here. Some duty stations do have on-base vet care open to non-military working animals. These services are often less expensive than civilian veterinary care providers. Prescription medications for the animals can also sometimes be obtained through military vets at a discount. Some animal services, grooming, pet stores, etc., and insurance companies will offer discounts for active duty members. When deploying, the American Humane Society recommends reaching an agreement on how to handle expenses for food, toys, grooming, and routine and emergency care. Making these arrangements provides the necessary funds to the caregiver to provide the level of service expected. Basic Allowance for Subsistence, or BAS, is meant to offset the cost of service members' meals. It ties back to a time when the room and rations were actually part of the service members' pay. BAS was meant to offset the cost of meals for their family members at that time. Today, BAS is linked to the price of food and adjusts each year to the Food Cost Index measured by the USDA. They evaluate the current cost of food, averaging throughout all zip codes, and apply it universally to this allowance. All members receive full BAS, but are required to pay for all of their food, including meals provided by the government. BAS 2 is a special provision that is twice the rate of the BAS. It is provided to those who are at a permanent station assigned to a single room that lack the adequate storage or preparation facilities when government mess is not available, and the government cannot otherwise make meals. These situations are assessed generally by the command and are typically applied to the entire unit rather than an individual. Despite generally making more total compensation than their civilian counterparts, military members were 3 times more likely to be food insecure. The tax-free income provided by BAS did not reduce the approximately 25.8% of military members meeting the definition for food insecurity, which was found by a survey conducted by the Department of Defense in 2023. While this is not a new trend, what is causing this insecurity is unclear. There were 6 questions in the survey. One question asked if they had cut or skipped meals in the past 12 months. Another asked whether they had been hungry but did not eat. Military members and their families who meet the income and other eligibility criteria can still access the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, like their civilian counterparts. Additionally, there is a Family Supplemental Subsistence Allowance, or FSSA program, hosted by the DoD, available to all members. It is uncertain if answering yes to these questions was due in part to their work schedules and demands, or if it was the result of financial hardships caused by military lifestyle. It is a voluntary program meant to remove them from SNAP by increasing their BAH. A family that does not qualify for SNAP may still qualify for FSSA. Community food banks can also be a consideration if needed. The cost of frequent moves, cost or lack of childcare, and loss of spousal income are the majority of financial factors in military food insecurity. Part of the DoD's effort to combat food security is to achieve a greater savings at the commissaries, aiming to save the military consumer $25 for every $100 they spend at the commissary on essential items. The commissary is basically the military community's neighborhood grocery store, located on military installations worldwide. They are accessed by those with a valid military ID card. The commissary often sells food and household goods at or below prices found at grocery stores off base. Although there is no tax charge, there is a 5% surcharge on all purchases made. Some locations also have a 1.9% credit card fee or a 0.5% debit card fee. They are just as convenient as civilian grocery stores with their commissary click-to-go online ordering and pickup option. They do offer their own store brand in addition to discounts and coupons. Each location will differ and would benefit from price comparison when moving to a new community. Utilizing the commissary can be a good step in reducing the overall cost of food. Another consideration for food cost is that of dietary choices. If there are special preferences, it may make the overall cost more expensive. As with their civilian counterparts, the budget for food will be personal. Different from civilians is that of members who require a medically supplemented diet. Medically necessary foods, as confirmed by their primary care provider, may qualify for cost share through the TRICARE insurance. To help pay for uniform and other clothing costs, service members may be given a clothing allowance if appropriate clothing is not provided. There are 4 types of allowances that are listed here. The cash amount received differs by branch of military and whether a male or female is being outfitted. The clothing maintenance allowance is only offered to Coast Guard. The initial clothing allowance is offered after a qualifying initial period upon enlisting. Officers receive it once, whereas enlisted members can receive it again for special assignments. The majority of the allowance is provided in kind, meaning actual articles of clothing or gear are issued rather than receiving funds to purchase it. The clothing replacement allowance is issued every year on the anniversary month and is meant to cover the replacement of uniforms based on normal wear and tear. In lieu of funds, they may also receive in-kind replacements for these articles. Extra clothing allowance is used for temporary or non-standard circumstances, such as when more uniforms are needed or civilian clothes are required for their duties. This includes maternity uniforms. Officers who are stationed outside the United States might also receive this allowance for civilian clothing. Some will see the clothing allowance as a bonus pay. It's beneficial to consider a few things before spending this clothing allowance on a non-uniform or duty-related item. One of the most impactful factors that few consider is the climate and overall weather at the following duty station. Depending on where someone grew up and how often they've had the opportunity to travel to different parts of the country, it may never cross their mind to consider the adaptations in clothing that might be needed. Take, for example, someone who has spent the majority of their duty in warmer or mild climates, such as Southern California, that boasts of 263 days of sun a year, and temperatures between 48 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit during short winters, and 64 and 84 degrees in the summers. If the next duty station is the Olympic coast and sound of Washington state, cold weather clothing will be something that is needed. Washington is reported to have only 152 sunny days, with longer winters at 32 to 48 degrees Fahrenheit and shorter summers in the low 80s. A low-cost recommendation for procuring both civilian and uniform items specific to the locale would be to use military thrift shops or resale consignment shops. Another consideration is athletic clothing. The military has physical fitness standards, conducting regular group exercise as part of their workday, and an annual physical fitness test, or PFT. Members must satisfactorily demonstrate that they can complete physical standards within timed periods, as well as meet BMI standards. Staying fit is a year-round activity that involves working out, clothing to do so, both uniformed and non-uniformed. A specific consideration would be for runners. They would benefit from considering the purchase of a new pair of running shoes once or twice a year, depending on the distance they run. Having an older, broken-down pair of shoes can create hidden, long-term health complications. Also to consider are the essential clothing worn underneath a uniform. Uniforms are not created with softness or much comfort in mind. Rather, they are designed to be a tool for successful mission completion. These items will need to be replaced on a frequent basis, depending on the duties of the member. Some commands may prefer to have colored t-shirts worn under the uniform, vice the standard khaki or sage. Even if someone claims to never spend money on clothing, these are considerations for the clothing allowance use and budget. An adjustment to the cost of living in certain areas is also provided. This income helps members afford the higher living expenses and housing costs experienced. The budgeting trap that some members may fall to is relying on this COLA as part of their base pay, rather than identifying it as supplemental for the higher expenses it's intended to reduce. Moving from the duty station that the member was receiving COLA to a non-COLA duty station may result in the reduction of pay that will require a sudden change in lifestyle. The longer someone has received COLA, the more difficult it can be to reduce their lifestyle accordingly. Start early and practice often if a reduction is anticipated with the following station.